Hello, welcome to Try This at Home. This is your host, Dayna Martin, for another wonderful show that I have planned for you. Tonight I have on three parents will be calling in. I'm doing some online live radio coaching, which is so exciting for me. And I found that I got a lot of great response when I did this before. And I had so many people contact me that would love to be coached. And they don't care that it's live radio. They just need help. So I am so willing to help them. But I think that people learn a lot by hearing other people's parenting issues. So they can apply it to their own lives. So I have a couple of people calling in tonight, and I'm really excited about that. It's funny because I never thought that that would be part of my life. I guess I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life other than being a mother. And after giving birth to my child and having an amazing experience, becoming a birth advocate, it extended to becoming an advocate for my children's rights and for peace and freedom. And unschooling, radical unschooling, as I like to call what we do. That's the title of my book. I love to promote it in a lot of different out-of-the-box ways. Now, this radio show is a tiny form of my advocacy. I love it. I love waking up on Wednesdays and kind of going with the flow of what I'd like for my show for that day. But I've advocated in unique ways over the years, and it's hard enough to walk a path alone doing this unschooling parenting thing and striving to give my kids freedom and peace and being criticized just in the mainstream culture. I mean, I've kind of learned to deal with that. But as far as dealing with other advocates who have really not agreed at all with how I choose to advocate, because I choose the media, I've been contacted by so many different shows and news channels and different things. And I've loved it. I've really enjoyed advocating in that way. And I think people are just afraid that somehow they're going to get in trouble, or they're going to be found out, because people want to keep this a grassroots movement. They want radical unschooling to stay grassroots and to stay radical. You know, what happens, like, I want to bring this to the mainstream. I want people to empower themselves and know that school is just an option, that they can live this life. And what they think of as homeschooling, sitting at the kitchen table or buying a curriculum and all this forced learning and negativity and controlling your kids, you don't have to live with any of that. Life could be so joyful. And I think a lot of people that I've come into over the years, they don't want it to be mainstream. They don't want a lot of people doing it, because then they're not so radical anymore. And for some reason they feel really special being kind of on the fringe. And while I can appreciate that, I don't have that intention. My intention is to bring this to anybody that wants to learn about it. I just happen to be authentically living this life, but I'm not doing it for any other intention other than children's rights. And because this is what just feels normal to me. We've never done anything any different. Our kids have never gone to school. They've never been punished, which is, people would think is crazy. You know, it's been about, 7 years that I've been advocating online, writing about unschooling. And I at times, sometimes it gets a little hard to say the same thing over and over and over again. But I think that's one thing you have to learn to do if you're somebody out there hoping to advocate for this type of life, is you have to get used to really sharing and repeating yourself. You get better and better at it, though. I think early on I was more reactive. I think that's a real journey to being an advocate, is sometimes you get really reactive and defensive, and it shuts people down. You can't be promoting a peaceful, loving philosophy and then be mean to the people that are asking and writing to you. It's such a hypocritical stance. And so I think coming to the place of truly extending this philosophy to everybody and knowing that everyone's doing the best they can with what they know, it's a really optimistic kind of approach to life, I realize, but it's helped so many more people. So I think it's just a journey. It's just personal growth. But I became a parenting coach after being a breastfeeding counselor and childbirth educator, and the parenting coaching just kind of happened naturally. But it started off as kind of an interesting situation, because I had watched the nanny shows, like the Nanny 911 shows and the Super Nanny and all those controversial shows. Well, they're not controversial to the average person, but to me, I like to watch them for research, just to see what these nannies are doing. And I said publicly somewhere in a forum that, well, I'm the un-nanny, kind of a spin on the unschooling term. And it really took off. I said, wow, this could actually really be something. Well, I put it out there, and I designed a framework to work around where people can have me come into their home for a couple of days, just like the framework of the show, but I'd be promoting a peaceful parenting philosophy and sharing with people how they can facilitate their child's learning and how to apply non-coercion and the nonviolent principle, and all of these amazing things in their lives. And it turned out to be wildly successful. I mean, I had a waiting list for people all over the world that wanted me to come and spend time with them, that it got kind of out of balance for me. My kids come before anything. And it's hard, I think, when you're an advocate, because you so want to help. You want to help the world. But your kids, I mean, it's all about, that's how it started. You really have to truly live what you're promoting. And so it was really important for me to be a mother first. So I started just turning down opportunities, but as like a consolation prize, I offered people to do this un-nanny coaching over Skype or on the phone. Well, it turned out to be so successful, and it was a win-win. I'm here with my kids. I have some days several coaching calls in a day, but I usually have at least one a day. And it works out great. So I do look forward to the time where I can go into people's homes again. In fact, I have a few lined up, but I'm very selective with where I go, because you gotta watch your back. You gotta be safe. I mean, you really have to research people and find out where you're going. The more kind of public we get, the more that's an issue. So that being said, I'm really excited to have these callers tonight, and I think it's going to be great. The first mother I have calling in, her name is Lindsay. She has a 2-year-old child, and I'm anxious to talk to her. I do a really short interview with the parents that contact me for the show before, but I don't like to go into any coaching at all, because I want it to flow really authentically on live. It's important to me. So I have a rough idea of what they're looking at, but then I want it to flow authentically and organically with you guys. While we're waiting for them to call in, I thought I would read to you part of an article that I wrote. It's called The Evolution of Children's Rights. I think it's my favorite article because it touches on the parenting aspect of radical unschooling and also the educational aspect. So I'm just hoping it'll inspire you. Children are the most discriminated people in our culture today. Much of the damage that many of us are healing from is directly related to how we were parented and treated in our lives growing up. As children, we were controlled and abused, even if we weren't aware of it. Control and abuse may have been all that the adults in our lives knew as parenting tools, because it was how they were raised themselves. There is a better way, a more peaceful and respectful way to live with children. This way is revolutionary, powerful, yet challenging. It takes reevaluating our role as parents and brainwashing our minds that have been conditioned by the institution of school. I have faith that our culture is ready. Let me help you step into this new awareness. We were raised in an era where the parental role was focused on obedience and control. As children, we were trained to believe that life is about taking orders, which, in essence, only meets the needs of the adults in our lives. Children learn what they live. Being raised in an authoritarian paradigm, children learn that forcing others to meet their needs is what life is all about. This creates a cycle of narcissism that our culture actually blames on a parent not being controlling enough. Isn't that ridiculous? I can't say that enough times. People thinking that not controlling somebody creates narcissism, and it's the total opposite. Most people who choose to homeschool their children purchase a curriculum and do exactly what schools do at home. It's the same model and mindset of forced learning, control, and injustice. When parents follow someone else's idea of what they think their kids should know at a certain age, it really distances them from their children, and distrust of the children's abilities begins. When parents evaluate, grade, measure, and compare their children to others, it cripples learning and damages the parent-child relationship, which is the very foundation necessary for true learning and growth. When children are respected and allowed true freedom, most of them choose to live life without attending school and all of the trappings that go along with it. For our children, this means living life without a forced curriculum or traditional schoolwork. We do not break life down into subjects. We do not grade or make our kids do workbook pages or busy work. We trust that our kids will learn what they need to in their life to be happy and in turn be successful. This level of trust in children is virtually unheard of in our culture because most of us were never trusted as children ourselves. This has led to years of healing for many of us to rekindle our trust for our inner voices and abilities in life. And I'm seeing every day that giving my children freedom and trust in every area of their lives serves to keep their inner voices, self-love, and creativity intact and strong. This is one of the greatest gifts that you can give another human being, to trust them. You know, it's so interesting when I talk to people. We think that it's such a normal thing to need to build up and help a child build their self-esteem. The incredible thing is, like, we think that's normal. Schools focus on it as if the child comes empty and broken into this world. Children are broken down, and that's why we then need to build them back up. The natural state of a child is that they love themselves, period. I'm sure there's exceptions, but in general, the natural state of a human being when they come into this world is to love themselves and trust themselves. They don't need self-esteem classes or courses, or for a parent to try to blow them up to be something, to feel good about themselves. We naturally are supposed to feel that way, but by being broken down by conventional parenting and the system, it's just really destructive, but nobody sees it. It's right in front of their face. It's so obvious. So the very people that break kids down then need to try to build them up again, and then they get the gratitude, then they get the thanks. Oh, thank you so much for building up my child's self-esteem. And it's like, that person's the one that broke them. They broke your child. I'm referring to teachers. I know that there's well-intentioned teachers out there. I'm not totally dissing the entire teaching profession. It's not their fault that they're in this role. Most people aren't in the awareness. I've worked with so many teachers. I'm working with 2 with coaching right now, and it's mind-blowing to them when they hear this philosophy, because it speaks truth. Children's rights and them, and everything that I share about rings true when you hear this perspective. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that the focus is on obedience. I didn't realize that control and obedience is the overtone of schools in general. And I don't want to do that to these kids anymore, but I don't know how to handle a class of 30 children. So I think it's really powerful to share that I'm definitely not anti-teacher, but I definitely am anti-system, and bringing awareness into the lives of these people who just love kids and want what's best for them is what this is all about. So I would love to go speak in schools. That's something that I would love to do, and just empower the faculty to really focus on children's rights more, because I don't think you can unlearn this. I think once you bring this to somebody's awareness, they see it. And how do you go back to treating another human being so unjustly once you've really learned the other side of it? It's kind of a double-edged sword for kids too. And I'm finding that I'm learning how to deal with it. For example, my daughter, Tiffany, takes a dance class. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, she didn't have class last week. It was school vacation. All the girls in our class found out what I do for a living, and they were all kind of circled around me asking questions. And it was really powerful to just see them say, oh, I wish you were my mom. Now that kind of, it half feels good, half breaks my heart, because I don't want kids to I want them to love their parents. I want the parents to be loved. And so I'm learning how to work with kids and teens and say, well, how can you speak to your parent and really tell them who you are and what your needs are? But I think that most kids are just in such a subservient role. It's really hard to talk to a parent like you would somebody else. So I think kids and teens love talking to me, because I don't speak to them any different than I would any adult. And that's empowering for kids. I believe that children would make the best choices if given the freedom. And when I see the goodness in all these kids and teens that just want trust, they just want freedom, and they just want respect, and their behavior, their negative behavior, is purely a result of control, meanness, and everything that goes along with the authoritarian paradigm. And it's so frustrating to me that more people don't see it. Okay. I don't look at myself as my child's teacher. I'm not standing in front of them, pouring knowledge into them as the all-knowing authority. My job is to give them as much of the world as possible to learn and grow from. And I look at myself as more like their facilitator of their interests and desires in life, because I know that I don't need to know all the answers. I do, however, need to know how to find all the answers through resources that the world offers. Through the internet, television, books, video games, day trips, vacations, community resources, apprenticeships, the list goes on and on. But we offer our children much more than traditional schooling could ever provide. Our kids are learning that answers aren't always black and white. They're learning about different theories and philosophies, and are developing their own beliefs. In short, we're raising free thinkers. The most important aspect for me is that our children are learning how to learn. Well, they know how to learn. They learned how to learn a long time ago. And once you learn how to learn, and you know how to look things up for yourself, and you know how to navigate the world to get questions answered, the world becomes your oyster. When children are controlled, they're afraid, they're fearful to ask questions. When punishment is looming, it shuts people down. And because most children live in such an unjust dynamic, no matter how I know parents are well-intentioned. I'm not coming down on every parent out there that doesn't know how to live this life yet and saying that they're awful parents. I'm saying that you're the best of intentions and you need new tools, because our culture's evolving fast. Once this takes hold, it's going to be like wildfire, because this is human evolution. This is just what happens. It's what happened with, the feminist movement, or I don't even know if the movement itself would even be categorized with what I'm trying to say. I just mean women's rights, other cultures' rights. I mean, things are growing, and children are just next on the human rights agenda, plain and simple. So I love to help parents learn with this new paradigm that's here, how to navigate it, because these children are being born now with this awareness. So when these kids that I'm talking to, like in my daughter's dance class, I don't think that children generally, they suffer and it really affects them. But when they find out that there is a different way that does give them rights and freedom and respect, then they really suffer. Now, it's interesting. You don't know you're in prison until somebody points it out, and then it's because they're living a different way. And so here's my daughter, and they're going, you can do whatever you want. And she's like, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to? My kids have no concept of like, really? Like, why wouldn't a child do this or that? Recently, our family was interviewed the other night. And my daughter, Ivy, people like to sensationalize our life. I understand that's kind of what's got kind of our foot in the door of advocacy, is people are just fascinated and they really highlight the no rules, no punishments. They can do whatever they want, stay up late, eat cookies all day if they want. And so people are fascinated, but they're making the assumption that kids make really bad choices because they've never seen children with true freedom. This is something our culture has never seen. And so they're basing their judgment and their fears on what they were told. People are so brainwashed to think kids would make bad choices because somebody had to validate controlling you, that you were told. And plus there's so many kids neglected that a lot of people think that without punishment it's neglectful. This isn't unparenting. This isn't doing anything. This is being very close and connected. But anyway, back to the story I was sharing. My daughter Ivy, we were all being interviewed, and Ivy and Orion were being interviewed together. It was like their first interview that they've ever done, and they did it. They loved it, and they were so cute and sweet. And he asked Ivy, there was two people interviewing, so you could eat cookies all day and candy all day if you want? And her answer, she said, yeah, I could if I wanted to, but I want to be healthy. So why would I do that? And there was total silence on the other end of the interview. Now, isn't that common sense, guys? You're listening to this and you hear it. Hello, it's like, she's like, duh, what's wrong with you? Like, who the hell would eat cookies and candy all day long? Well, it's somebody who's been controlled. It's somebody who is not trusted, and they don't trust themselves as a side effect, and you can only have one, or you can, I'm going to control your candy consumption to the point of a child just totally overusing or, eating obscene amounts. And anyway, so this level of freedom really blows people's minds. And I just love to advocate for it. It's such a passion. I love proving people wrong. I don't know, but I love blowing old myths out of the water. Oh, I love it. And I love showing that life can be so joyful and so pleasurable if you just stop controlling every little thing and just put a little trust in there. You stop resisting life and just let things flow. That might sound like totally out there and new agey. And I've done my share of studying and researching every aspect of science and new age, spirituality. But the truth is, if you stop just resisting everything going on with your kids and you trust them and embrace it, and you're still there and present, you're not ignoring them, you'd be blown away with how creative that they are, how much they learn, how intelligent they are. I mean, will surpass your own abilities. I can guarantee you that. I want to read this, some more of this. Another important aspect of protecting my children's rights is honoring the basic right that they have of freedom of mind. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. What does that even mean? Freedom of mind. We do not try to pry into our children's minds to assess what they know. Children today do not have this basic human right, and their minds are constantly prodded. This is an incredibly evasive experience and not an accurate way to discover what somebody else really knows anyway. I believe that what my children are learning is their business, and it's not right or necessary to constantly be trying to evaluate them or their knowledge. So I feel like I'm doing my job. Think of how invasive that is. Can you imagine if you were treated like most kids are treated, somebody constantly quizzing you and testing you and asking you, what'd you learn today? And things like that. You just bring yourself back to those years of how awful that felt. Education is not the main focus of our lives. Instead, our focus is on family, connection, and pursuing our passions and interests together. Happiness and love guide our days. Our children do get a phenomenal education, however, as a side effect of living a rich, joyful life together. Our home is filled with interesting things to explore and learn from, like music, art, games, and crafts. Our kitchen cabinets are full of ingredients for cooking and for experiments. Our home library overflows with mind-expanding reading material, informative magazines, and intriguing games and puzzles. Instead of viewing our home as some kind of museum of all of our things, of all of our stuff, I like to think of it as, oh my gosh, like just a hub of our interests. It's a library, it's a workshop, it's a dance studio, it's so many levels of things, but it's not, the last thing it is a museum of our things. Now, this doesn't mean that our home and the way that I have it and facilitate my nest for my family is unorganized. I like things organized, actually. I think unschooling does get a bad rap, and I've known so many people over the years. Oh my gosh, over the last 10 years, I've connected with so many people, and there's such a wide range of people living this life. There are some people who don't have a lot. Their homes are very messy and unkempt. And then there's people who are doctors and lawyers, and their homes are immaculate. They're gorgeous. So, I mean, you have to personally individualize this experience for yourself. That unschooling doesn't, even though I'm giving kind of a broad framework, you have to give your kids an interesting, rich life. I mean, bringing all these resources into their lives. I mean, if you don't have a lot of money to do that, there's always ways around it. There's public libraries, there's Craigslist. People are giving away craft supplies all the time. You really need to get creative, but the point is you have to have something. Mind-expanding resources, the internet. I find that people have a really hard time with the idea of media, especially people who have come from a Waldorf background, because they're so fearful of media, of the internet or computer games, and with television too. And one thing I like to say to coaching clients is that when you limit whatever you're limiting, you're limiting learning, period. I love what that triggers in people. That line. People resist so much, and they're basing their child's, their experience on the resistance that their children have had to control, which is not freedom. Just because you say, okay, I'm learning about this new philosophy, so I'm going to let go of limits surrounding TV and media and the computer and see what happens. Oh my gosh, it's so normal for weeks or months for kids to just do nothing but that, because they've never had that kind of freedom, and they don't know when you're going to take it away from them or start controlling it again. So what happens with control is you develop this really unnatural, unbalanced dynamic with these things. So when you have freedom, you really open everything up for more balance to come into play. I'm just taking a moment here because I should have had a couple callers by now, so I think maybe you see why radio is having technical issues, which is fine because you know what, I can ramble on all night about this stuff. So maybe it's not meant to be until next week with the coaching calls. Let's see. I think that's the hardest thing with doing a radio show, because you're not in total control. Okay, so we're talking about control. When it comes to my advocacy, I kind of don't like to rely on anybody. It's something I've always stood alone. I don't rely on other people. If I want to advocate, I do it. I create conferences or events, or I'm always saying yes to whatever opportunity comes my way. So it is kind of hard to be at the mercy of a radio station, and they're wonderful here. They're actually so kind and loving and willing to help, but it's hard. I wish I had a tech guy. I really need a tech dude to come over, or dudette to come over during my shows to help me with the side of it, because you get in your flow when you're talking, and to have to stop and do the technical side is challenging, but I'm learning as I go here. All right, so I'm just going to keep chatting with you. Hopefully they'll resolve the issue of my callers, and let's keep on keeping on here. Somebody wants to try to call me. that's listening, just call into the show, and I want to see if it goes through. We'll just give it a try. You're more than welcome to do that. The number for call-in is 1-718-717-8296. So if you're listening and you have a coaching question, a parenting question, call me. Call me right now. I'm happy to put you through. We'll see if it works. Okay. Children are human beings who are living in the moment quite naturally, but our cultural view is that they should be always preparing for the future instead of truly being present in what they're learning and experiencing in the moment. Did you guys notice that growing up in school, everything was, what are you going to be when you grow up? I mean, even with these interviewers with our family, they were so nice, but the question about what do you want to be when you grow up comes up all the time. And kind of like be if somebody asked you all the time, what are you going to be when you're 80? What are you going to do? And you're like, what? Why can't I be something right now? So when my children get that question, Devin's always kind of like baffled. Like, what do you mean? What am I going to be when I grow up? I'm being something now. I'm a blacksmith. I'm a woodworker. I don't know what I'll be doing in the future. So constantly preparing kids for the future is like adults having to sit in a classroom against their will all day, every day, preparing for retirement. So how fulfilling would your life be if that was forced upon you? Education is an important part of life. Ooh, hold on one sec. I'm getting a couple calls here. Hold on one sec. Hello, this is Dayna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dayna. This is Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great. So who do I have on the other line, too?
This is Frankie.
Oh, Frankie. Hey. Well, do you mind being put on hold for a minute while I take care of the call with Lindsay?
No, it's fine. I can't even really talk. I heard Dayna say, someone call in to see if the technical problem is still happening. So I thought, well, I'll call.
Thank you, Frankie. You're awesome. Thank you for testing that out because somehow something got taken care of. So I appreciate it. Have a great night,
Okay,
Frankie.
good.
I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Linz. Thank you so much for calling.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the show. Tonight's show are the coaching calls, like I told you. So I'm really happy to work with you. And I was telling my listeners that you have a 2-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us a little bit about her and what you're dealing with right now?
Absolutely. She's hilarious. Her name's Jessie. She's probably the silliest human being that's ever walked the earth. But we're really, really struggling with bedtime. I feel like every other part of what's going on on a day-in, day-out basis is really flowing very well. And then bedtime, we're both getting very frustrated and struggling. And it's just making me feel like I'm not the mom that I want to be the rest of the day. It's just at bedtime, everything's coming unraveled, and I hate that feeling.
Okay, well, just walk me through what's going on. What are your needs in that moment, and what are her needs in that moment? So are you feeling like where's your husband or your partner?
He's my husband, and he works nights, so he's not typically home on his days off. He is here, but it's, depending, he works a lot of hours, so it can be, very little throughout the week that he's home at bedtime. And that kind of actually throws a wrench in it sometimes too, because sometimes he comes home for his lunch. As a cat, we're usually unwinding, and that, of course, gets her going crazy when Daddy comes home.
Yeah.
But we don't have a set routine. We really don't. I just try and kind of go with the flow. Like we have dinner and then a bath, and then after that, sometimes a little bit of quiet time. Like I've been trying to get us to unwind a little bit after bath by turning the lights a little lower and reading some books. But she'll start acting tired. Like even her eyes will get red, and she'll start kind of getting really whiny and wanting to be held. But if I don't hold her, she gets very hyper. Like she'll just kind of run around and get really silly and wanting to pull out toys. But at the same time, she's being very whiny. Like if a baby doll falls, it's a huge deal instead of normally just picking up the baby doll,
Well, let's talk
about. I feel like she's tired.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I want to stop you right there just so we can touch on a few things before we get a little further into it. What time is it usually around that you start like the routine?
Usually around 8:30.
Okay, well, I mean, generally a natural sleep cycle for most children is a little bit later. And starting around 2 years old, kids really do, their sleep cycle does change. And I think we've been really conditioned with these bedtime routines. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with them, but are you looking to get a break? Are you like honestly dying to just like have some time alone, and where you're alone putting her to sleep? That must be pretty tired. You must be really ready for some alone time.
Absolutely. And I really am, because that's the only time I have all day. You know, we wake up together and we're together all day. But I'm okay with doing it later. I just want to meet her needs. You know what I mean?
No, I totally do.
Because my husband works nights, if we're up till 4 a.m, that's fine with me, because it would help us spend more time with him on his days off anyway.
Okay, well, let's talk about that possibility. I think that we do misread sometimes our children when they're really clearly telling us what their needs are. Now, I know her eyes, you said, might be a little red, but if she's running around playing still, she's not ready. She's not tired. And if you have so much of what's happening in these kind of dynamics with young children is if you've raised your child with an attachment style parenting philosophy, you're very close and connected. And children read your energy and your emotions just as much, if not more, than what you're saying or doing. And so when you're in a state of resistance and really, really trying to control her to get to bed, she feels it. And the resistance and the anger and the frustration builds. So I think oftentimes we do misread things instead of taking, and it's not your fault, it's a cultural perspective, but there's not a lot of information out there about a more peaceful approach to parenting. And so it's like we're either going totally by our instincts, or we're going by a rough guide of a more conventional approach, which is very control based. So if she's feeling you're not really present with her and you're kind of rushing things along and you're trying to control her to get to sleep, that in itself would be cause for a frustrating behavior completely from her.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Because sometimes maybe if I'm trying to get her to go to sleep too early and she feels me frustrated that she's not asleep yet, then it kind of starts the tug of war of bedtime.
Well, you can feel it, can't you? You can feel it, Lindsay. You can feel that power struggle, and it feels really yucky to you, and you're feeling really negative, and she's feeling the exact same way, except she can't put her finger on it. She just wants the freedom to be with you and just be hanging out. And don't you feel it when you're being rushed along with people? You can totally feel when somebody's not really tuning in with what your needs are, and instead they're really focused on their own. They're not really listening to you. They just want to get to their own agenda. So I think part of a partnership-based parenting approach, an unschooling approach, would be to start to get comfortable, because she's getting older. Like when you have a baby and toddler that you can nurse to sleep, and sleep is just kind of easy, and things are just changing. They're kind of recalibrating in the family right now for you. So see what happens but why can't you learn? You can totally learn to meet your own needs and fill your cup with her there. If you could somehow do that, whether you can pull the Play-Doh out and grab a magazine for yourself and have her play by your side while you're having a nice cup of tea and a magazine and relaxing, and pretend that she's asleep and do what you would do if she was with her by your side. Eventually, she will just go to sleep beautifully when you do, and then you'll end up waking up before her more than likely, because kids sleep longer than adults, and you'll have plenty of time in the morning. And just surrender to what's happening instead of fighting it so much.
Okay. And it's not like I really, really want to, and I know that I've always been a very, I'm a planner. I'm a rigid person. Let's do things at this time, because it's kind of when I set those things for myself, that's how I thrive. But she's not thriving in that,
Right.
And I don't want to put her in a box. I want her to. Do you want the baby in there? Okay. And I don't want her. I definitely want her. I don't want this nighttime frustration, because it's really weighing on my heart, and I feel like it is for her too. I'm scared, but only because a few times I've let her stay up later, and she still woke up at the same time in the morning, and it was really crabby the next day. So is that something that would typically kind of run its course after a few days where she's like,
yeah.
well, I don't have to wake up so early?
Totally. It'll recalibrate. It needs a little while. It usually takes about a week or two before things balance back out again. Her system needs to get in a more natural state with it. For one, think about how miserable it is for the 2 hours that you're trying to get her to sleep. All that negative energy that she goes to bed with. I know you don't want to give that to her every night.
No, and I don't. I hate it. And it's the one thing that we're just really, really, I'm at a loss at how to fix. And I just haven't been able to just kind of give myself up to, well, let's just see what happens if I don't do anything, because I'm so scared.
Well, it doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. Like, if you can kind of initiate it, but in your mind, could you be open enough expectation-wise to, like, do it joyfully? And if she's not down for it, be like, all right, no big deal, and just maintain your joy, maintain your state, and be like, okay, cool, let's just read a book. You're not quite ready yet. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't try. It's not a completely hands-off approach, but just check in with her. How verbal is she right now? She must not being 2. She must be just learning.
She's actually just had like a huge word explosion over the last 2 weeks. So she's speaking really, really well and a lot more. Stringing together multiple words in a sentence, not fully being able to express herself, but definitely getting closer.
Oh my goodness, that is such a huge factor too if she's taking longer to go to sleep. I mean, when children go through really big milestones, babies, when they crawl or walk or taking on new speech patterns, they don't want to go to sleep. They want to stay up and keep practicing. Nature wants them to keep practicing and practicing and practicing these new skills. So
absolutely,
that's so normal too. I mean, everything you've shared is normal, and the only dysfunction is caused by the resistance to what's happening.
Okay. And it was huge. We had 1 week where it was like no sleep at all. And then she got a good night's sleep and woke up talking. It was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. I was like, oh, well, this is what's been going on. I thought maybe her molars were coming in. Nope, words were coming in, which was awesome.
Oh, I love that. I love that you put it that way. That's beautiful. Well, thank you for calling in, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And we're gonna give it a try tonight and give ourselves a few days and see how we do if we just kind of relax.
Great. Well, good luck to you, and let me know if you need anything else, and keep me updated.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for calling. Take care. Hi, this is Dayna. You're on the air. Who do I have now with me?
Hi, it's Aaliyah.
Hi, Aaliyah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Well, welcome to the show. Before, when we spoke on the phone briefly, you shared that you had a son. Would you like to share with my listeners about him?
Sure. He is going to be 5 in July, and we were, at the age, when he was 2.5, we were involved in a very bad motor vehicle accident, and he suffered a severe brain injury and lost his ability to walk, talk, eat, everything. Basically was like a newborn again. And so as we're on this road to, he's recovering and he's doing really well. He's still not speaking for himself though, but he does communicate like with his eyes and all other ways he communicates. And so we're having issues with, one thing that I didn't realize bothered me as much as it does was when other people tell him he's okay when he's really not. Like if he's kind of upset about something and someone says to him, oh, you're okay. But I know like they mean well, but I know he's okay also.
Right. Yeah, that gets my mind going on so many different levels. For one, I'm really sorry about your son. Sorry to hear about your accident. That must have been a really hard time in your life. And that was how many years ago? 3 years ago?
2.5.
Well, I'm glad to hear that he's doing well and that he is such a loving, supportive mom. So hearing somebody else tell your son he's okay when everything inside of your body is telling you otherwise. Mm-hmm. So you're there during this is like during physical therapy.
It's during therapy. It's if he's upset and we're out and he's ready to go, or if we're at a restaurant and he's really ready to eat and the food is not ready, and he starts it sounds like whining, like a type of whining kind of noise. It's not words, obviously, but it's not a pleasant sound. But he's not crying either, but he's clearly upset.
Right.
And
so, go ahead.
People are often dismissive of it, just like, oh, you're okay, it's going to be okay, or, you know, and even if it is going to be okay, I don't know how to communicate with them that I don't really like that they say that to them.
Right. I mean, for one, it is really triggering, and you want your son to feel validated and heard, not just brushed off like that. I'm sure my listeners can relate that we hear this all the time, don't we? You see a little child fall at the playground and the parent says, you're okay, instead of, it's like this cultural attitude of toughening somebody up. But in fact, it really is that, you know, one layer of it is that focusing on their needs is too challenging and difficult. So just saying you're okay kind of puts a Band-Aid over something, but that issue wasn't taken care of. So it's kind of a lazy way out. It's something to say to somebody to shut them up, but appear empathetic. But that is not an empathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, there was a point when he didn't make any sounds. So for him to be making this whining sound and communicating that he's upset, I don't want to shut it down.
Exactly. So you're uncomfortable saying something to somebody, and you know, I'd like to talk about the situations in which you can let it go and the situations in which it's really necessary. Now, people that are just casual encounters, say a waitress at a restaurant, it's probably not necessary to say something in that moment, but your son is still hearing it. So what could you say to him to encourage him without causing negativity and judgment? Because, you know, most people more than likely are well-intentioned. They just don't know what to say. So there is that factor that most people are trying to help, but as a culture, we just don't know what to say because we're so empty ourselves that our needs aren't met that people said that to us. So with somebody like a physical therapist or somebody that's with him regularly, you're nervous to say something to them?
Yeah, even like it could be family, it could be friends, and I'm just a little. I don't want to come off as offensive because apparently I do. Right. If I say, you know, could you not say that? Because I don't think he is okay, but I don't know how to, say it in a way that I'm not shutting them down either, because they are trying to, you know, make him quote unquote feel better.
Okay, well, what about something like, and this is like one of my passions, I love positive, nonviolent communication and working through this. So what about being empathetic and understanding and saying something like, I really appreciate that you're trying to connect with him and help him feel better, but I'm afraid that comment just doesn't really address his needs. I mean, that's a really okay, peaceful thing to say to somebody. I don't think you're not attacking them. You're saying, I really appreciate the intent. I appreciate the intent. I appreciate the intent in that comment, but I just feel like it brushes off his needs a little bit. So I'd love if we could find something else to say together to him, or something, pull her into partnership and say, do you have any ideas? Because then you're not really judging. You're kind of making a comment to a statement, and you're pulling them into the problem side. Do you have any other ideas of something we could say that would really validate his needs? Because where he's nonverbal, I don't like to shut him up. I'm so excited when he's speaking. So I think it's your energy too. I think if you're feeling defensive, you never want to really respond from that place. How many of us have unfriended someone on Facebook in defense? How many of us have said things we didn't want to say to somebody in uncomfortable situations because we were reactive? You know, part of growing up, we're always growing up. Part of growing up as a parent too is to learn not to respond when you're in reaction. That's such a big lesson. If you're in reaction, it's better to not say anything. So just let that kind of the energy of the statement of the defense roll through you, and kind of sit there and breathe through it as if it was a contraction in labor. Everything's like a birth analogy to me, so just bear with me. So just let the defense roll through you and breathe through it, then come from a balanced place of just like seeing that this person's well-intentioned. Because if we feel that our children are victim to people, it really, our mama bear kind of comes out, and we we can be really hard on people, all well-intentioned on our
part. Yeah, I can see how I've been feeling more defensive than trying to work with the person who is saying it.
And you know what, Aaliyah? It's so normal. Like on this path of growth, of awareness, when you start seeing parenting differently, the first response to people is all of a sudden you see all the ways in which conventional approaches and interactions with children are disrespectful. Like the veil is lifted and all of a sudden you just want to scream like that's wrong to say to a child.
Yeah. And my poor boyfriend, he's like, why are you judging them? And I was like, I'm not, I'm just observing. And
right. So
it might sound judgmental, but I'm not, I promise.
No, what you're experiencing is so normal and perfect and exactly what's supposed to happen through personal growth and awareness with this type of life. So it's great. So now you can kind of recognize that's part of it, and you can move through it and carry this peaceful, respectful philosophy for children to everybody else in your life, anyone you're interacting with. Focus on the needs under the other people's behavior, that they're well-intentioned, but and you're validating that and understanding that, but your son's needs are really important, and so are yours. And your need is for him to be treated respectfully. His need is to be heard, according to you, and their need is to feel useful. So, and to help. So just to say, hey, you know what? Ugh, I so appreciate it, but that particular saying just makes me feel like it's brushing off his needs, and I want him to speak. I want him to feel valued. So do you have any other ideas? Let's think of something together, or that you could say instead of that. And just, can you feel the energy of that is not accusing?
Yeah, I really think that could work. And people wouldn't get offended when I say that.
Well, you're saying that you're not saying you don't like them. You're not saying I don't like what you're saying that particular saying just rubs me the wrong way. So I think that could be really helpful. All right. Well, I'm really glad that you called in tonight, Aaliyah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if keep me updated on what's going on. I'm anxious to hear the first person, and be brave. You can do this. You can do this.
I'll try. I will not be defensive. Now I'll recognize it as that, because now I know that that's what it was.
And realize that growth and maturity is not responding from defense. It's part of life. And so to shift to a more peaceful life, if you want more peace for your son, you truly have to live it yourself. And so you're the biggest model in his life. And so he's going to learn so much just by watching how you interact with people. So it's a really big responsibility, and one that I know you can handle.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for calling in tonight. Have an awesome night.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was amazing. I love connecting with people and helping them. Looks like we have one more caller here tonight. Hi. Thanks for calling in. Is this Michelle?
It is. Hi, Dayna.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left here, which is usually enough time to answer one question or so. So I'll just have you dive right in, Michelle.
Yeah, I know, and I've been listening.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what was going on
so
with the phone lines tonight.
So it brought up so many more questions.
What?
I'm sorry. I said I was listening, and it brought up so many other questions, but the main question I called in with is I'm trying to teach myself, and I have twin boys. They're 5. And there's one of them who likes to, and has always liked to, even before he was born, kind of be the boss in the relationship. And he gets really upset at not being first and not being the winner and just not having his way while playing with his brother or, dealing with his parents. He gets really mad and frustrated, and I know he acts out and he hits, and I get mad because he hits his brother, which hurts me, and I react. So I've created this whole issue myself, and I'm trying to undo it, the damage that I've done, with the anger and how to respond or not respond.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it a little. I think it's, again, when you're fairly new to this life and you realize that children really do live what you model, it's like everything comes down on you and you're like, oh gosh. And it's hard to see a child's behavior and not take responsibility for it yourself. And it is partially that, but do realize that humans get angry. It's part of the full range of emotions we were born with. And so I think for a 3, 4, and 5-year-old, I mean, any ages under probably 6 or 7, it's really common to hit as a form of communication. Now, I know it's triggering people all over the country hearing these words right now, but hitting is a form of communication. However, I will say that it's something that it's impulsive and it's really hard to control for a child. I mean, think about the fact that you get angry. You still get angry, right? And you yell and you get upset. Is that true?
I try really hard not to, since I've tried to start this partnership with them, but yes, right. I still do.
And you know what? You have 30 plus years, I'm guessing, experience over them.
Yes.
And you still can't control it? What? Sorry. And you still can't control it after all that life experience. No. You can't control sometimes yelling. So I think it's one of those things where we expect too much from kids. We expect them to be perfect. And I think that we blame ourselves and really internalize it when something that we appear is going wrong happens. Like when he hits his brother, it's like, bad mother, like hits you too. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's something I did. And you're so triggered. I think just kind of letting go of that and not taking full responsibility for everything, because when you do, it makes it about you, and it like eliminates your ability to work in partnership, to problem solve with them and help them get their needs met. Now, I'm not saying to encourage hitting, obviously, and I'm not saying not to say anything about it. Just open your heart to understand that it's normal and it's a form of communication, but it's usually a late form of communication, meaning that most kids have tried other ways before getting to that point to be heard or to communicate their needs. But because there's limited verbal skills in younger children, they have a harder time. So generally, I think being in tune when you can tell that your son is getting, when the energy is kind of escalating and things are starting to get heated, it could be a great cue for you to really be there, be present with them and really connect and just be able to be his voice when he's starting to get upset. I mean, I'm not sure.
So I do try that, but it's very sudden. I mean, you know, it can be very sudden. We were having a little Easter egg hunt the other day. It wasn't Easter, but we were just playing the game, replaying the game. And, you know, they were a little ways away from me, and the one brother that kind of with the issue, anger, impulsive, you know, he got 3 eggs, and then his brother got 1, and he got mad, and I wasn't close enough to him. I didn't know what was going to happen. We were all having fun, and then all of a sudden, you know, he's just on his brother.
Well, I mean,
he got an egg, and it wasn't his.
And that's a great point, because you can't be there all the time, can you? You can't be, especially with 2 little guys running around. So would you like to continue the story?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying, it's like, I try, you know, then after the fact to say, I know that made you mad, and do you want to talk about it, and what else can we do, you know? But it's always it's so sudden. Like it doesn't get heated. It just happens quickly.
Well, I don't think
like
you need to.
It starts to heat up.
Right, exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've experienced it myself, and many of the families I've worked with.
And I think maybe because that's so sudden is why my reaction is so sudden. You know, because it's like we're just in this peaceful, loving heck spot, and then all of a sudden, boom, you know.
Well, one thing that's really interesting for parents is when children are raised in connection with their parents, and they're very attached to you. Nature, when they're babies, wants you to be completely in tune with them to be able to meet their needs. And so when they're upset, you react. Now, as children get older, I think parents really need to learn that you can be the rock, Michelle, and the solid form of peace, and modeling that for them is just to maintain your joy during those moments. And not even joy, I guess I could say contentment, whatever state you're in before it breaks out, and holding that. It's hard to be so easily pulled into somebody's negative, angry energy with no self-control to maintain your state is something, as we grow up as parents, we really need to work on, because it's really disempowering, and it makes a situation that's just a fleeting thing that wouldn't be that big of a deal. It makes it into a huge deal. So it goes from just something that might not, a rough and tumble little moment into a big deal and to overprocess it. Kids generally, if they've gone through something like that, they really don't want to sit down and process and explain and be lectured on how to do it more next time. And I mean, and that's yucky for you too, but you're thinking to yourself most of the time, like, oh, what is a good parent supposed to do right now? I think just redirecting and just being like, guys, how can I help you? And not getting so sucked in and angry about the situation. When your kids are angry, you don't need to be angry. And that's a huge problem with parents. Parents get so angry that their kids are angry. Now, take a minute and think back to your own upbringing. How, oh my goodness, was this just so prevalent?
Right.
In conventional parenting.
Too.
We got in trouble as kids when we were angry. Our parents, adults did not want to see us angry. We were sent away. Nothing was ever worked through or resolved. Either we were just content or happy in their presence, or they didn't want anything to do with us most of the time.
Yeah, I can't ever remember being angry as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but at the same time, it's like I tell them, my other child is getting hurt, for no reason and out of the blue. And I tell them, I said, when somebody hurts my children, it makes me angry. And you're my child, and I love you, but
But to them,
the other one got hurt, so then I have to respond to him. I mean,
right. Well, you're focused on
and crying and.
Okay. Well, let's keep moving forward here. I think you're focused on the behavior and not the needs under your child's behavior that's hitting. And he has real needs too in that moment. And to him, it wasn't for nothing. There was a reason behind it. And it's very excruciatingly frustrating to not have your needs recognized and to not be validated in that situation, because you're viewing a behavior as what you're labeling in your mind as bad. You're treating him meanly in response to it, thinking that's what you should do. But the truth is that if you can approach both of them with the same energy of unconditional love in those moments, put your arm around the son that was hurt, look at your other son and lovingly just say, what happened, buddy? How can I help you guys? Instead of anger toward him, because that anger toward him,
right,
it just perpetuates more anger and self-hatred, and you don't need to do that to teach him the lesson.
Right.
You don't need to get mad to teach him the lesson that what he did was wrong. In fact, you're really modeling the opposite.
Exactly. I know. That's why I take responsibility, or I try to. Because I tell him, and we talk about it after, and they know that I freak out sometimes too, and. I apologize for that, but I do.
It's quite a journey, isn't
it?
It's quite a journey. Well,
that's why I say I taught him everything he knows,
Yeah. Well, thank you for calling in.
Okay. I'm
care.
coming to life back.
Bye.